There is no, what I thought was that there was like a volume that you could fill up and say like, all right, I did it. Like as a dad, I did it. I spent the right amount of time with them and now they can grow up and move out and I'm good. You know what I mean? And what I found out is there is no like amount of time. There's not enough time. You know what I mean? You can never have enough time. And even me, I look back and go, "Oh, what if I would have did it that way? Or what, you know what I mean? What if I would have pushed him in that direction? Or what if, you know what I mean? There's no amount, you never get full. You're never
Right.
like, oh, I got all the kid time I needed and I'm good. Like they're still going to grow up and leave and you're still going to be like, oh man, I miss them. So, don't beat yourself up or anything like that because it's just, they're your kids. You know what I mean? It's the best time of your life.
Overpressure refers to the sudden increase in pressure above the surroundings caused by the wave generated when something explodes. It propagates outward from the origin, capable of causing impact, momentum, or disruption, depending on its intensity and distance, is a critical factor in assessing the effects of a mission. Welcome to the Overpressure podcast, where we dive into the explosive world of business for entrepreneurs who are vets or veteran entrepreneurs.
Hey, on today's episode of the Overpressure podcast, we have Mr. James Walton joining us, owner of PBN or Prepper Broadcasting Network. And this guy's been contributing to that community for a long, long time, providing so much value, coaching people on preparedness and making sure that we're ready for whatever comes our way. So check out this episode and find out how it can apply to your life. Hey everyone, we got James joining us today from Virginia, correct?
Virginia, beautiful day in Virginia for sure.
Yeah, the classic home of beautiful architecture, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So-
I agree with you. American presidents, rebellion, and architecture for sure.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, you are doing a lot, and one of the main things that I think you have going on is Prepper Broadcasting Network. What was the inspiration for starting that?
Yeah, PBN was my way of learning about, prepping from preppers rather than from TV when I first got started in this wild thing. And I just broadcasted on the network consistently and relentlessly for like 6 years. And then the guy who actually started it, he was a Utah mountain man, like the real deal. And he was like, I'm tired of this, James. I just want to go back into the Rockies with my dog. So I'm either going to shut it down or I'm going to sell it to you. And I think that was just, the results of just showing up every week. You know what I mean? Not that we were blowing anything out of the park with numbers on the Prepper Broadcasting Network in 2018, but just one of those, like the old adage, right? You just show up consistently and good things happen. And so that, that's what wound up happening. I basically bought it off of him, took it over, and then, 2020 came and everything just got real relevant real fast.
Yeah,
You know
good
what I
timing.
mean?
What was the company like at that point when you purchased it? Was it like just his show, or did you have other
we had
shows as well?
I think we had like 8 hosts on or something along those
Okay.
lines. It was real weird because it was a revolving door, barring myself and a few others. Myself and probably about 3 other hosts. The rest of them were sort of always in and out. And then those guys came with me, and we really built a contingent of hosts. 13 hosts we have on the podcast network now, and the vast majority have been with me since I bought it. They've been
That's awesome.
consistently putting out content since I bought it, and I'm always pushing them to kind of monetize what it is they're great at, what they're doing, and that kind of stuff. And it's been fun, man. It's been fun for sure.
Yeah, and you're building a network, and that's something that I think we need more of. It can't be 4 different, networks controlling everything. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And, I've seen this movement because we're in the media all the time. Like that's what we do. We're a PR agency, and the marketplace has shifted, and now it is starting to become networks of podcasts or YouTube channels. And how have you seen that progression from the media landscape in that same time frame?
Oh man, I mean, we've lived through the whole lived through the whole progression of people believing the news to people not believing the news. You know what I mean? And watching the ranks of our listenership grow, and also kind of the actionable side of news. I think that's probably one of the biggest differences in, I'll say, some of alternative media, because the people who want to put you to work and get you to be better and do things, that's kind of what we do. You can, not only do you trust what's coming out of that network, but it's also kind of proven, right? I think there's a principle built around that. I don't remember what it's called, but someone tells you to do something, you do it, it works, it reinforces your trust in that person. And that's what we do best at PBN, but I think a lot of information, a lot of sort of, I don't want to call it training, but advice maybe, comes from that alternative side. And then you wind up doing the stuff that they say they're doing or you should do, and it works, and that was kind of the big sea change for us. It was a pretty big change, to watch that.
Yeah, you guys seem to be in the sweet spot of providing value and educating and entertaining. I'm sure is a part of it. How has it been building that network? Like, what has worked, what has not? You said you had a rotating in and out, kind of in the beginning. Like, what made that shift to now? Obviously,
holding on to. Yeah, sure. Holding on to hosts seem to be sort of a combination of giving them the freedom to talk about what they want, which is always, that's the cornerstone of PBN. You know what I mean? What all the business moves that we've made has always been towards swerving the asteroid belt of censorship. You know what I mean? And,
yeah, I do.
We've just had to, and we're not really even an extreme network. We don't really talk about many extreme topics, but because of the nature of being able to say what you want and question things, you wind up, stepping on a landmine from time to time and getting emails from YouTube and Discord and that kind of stuff. So, that's always been top of mind for me, was I want to get paid to do this. And I also want to make sure that the people who are here and, sitting behind the microphone for an hour a week for me are able to say what they want and express themselves. And the other part of that has also been kind of understanding that this is not their full-time career. And I think that was kind of where my predecessor messed things up a little bit. He got into this mindset of, I need a show a week and I need it this way and I need it, so on and so forth. And if people missed deadlines or something like that, and again, nobody on the PBN was getting paid at that point either. Then, you have a situation where people are saying, I'd love to do a podcast, but I'm not going to be able to make it this week or next week. So, working with their life schedule and then giving them the freedom to talk about what they want and promote what they want, get sponsors if they want to go that route. That kind of freedom, I think, is what's kept them on. And, to be honest with you, a lot of the hosts were fans of mine who, by way of talking to them, interacting with them, I was able to say, you should probably do a show. You got a lot of information, because a lot of these people, Austin, that listen to me are way more prepared than I am. You know what I mean? And they've got experience in life that I don't have. And so it's just, it's kind of an easy thing. I can recognize a pretty good host. Usually authors make really great hosts. It's almost inevitable. You got a guy who wrote a book. He's really thought about a lot of stuff to write that book. If it's well done,
right,
it's almost a guarantee that he's got a lot, enough going on up here to sustain a 45-minute conversation. Because one of the weird things that we do on PBN, man, and it's really weird now. It wasn't weird at the time because we were kind of parallel with AM radio, as far as the delivery.
Right.
Most of our shows are solo. We're not the typical podcast where we have a guest all the time. Most of the shows are our hosts solo or with one other, teammate, broadcaster that they're with. And that's getting rarer and rarer, which is always weird to me. You know what I mean? In the podcast world.
Yeah, I would struggle doing 45 minutes solo. I like the interaction. I like questions back and forth.
It is fun. I mean, I love interviews, definitely.
Yeah, I admire the guys that can do that. So, you had mentioned sponsors, and obviously I'm all for
building a successful business, but you had a
Sure.
creative approach with your sponsors early on. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Anything to survive, right? I mean, so we when I bought the network, we were at like peak Facebook dialed in demographic advertising, and I was reaching out to sponsors all the time, telling them about this network. And our statistics in the podcast world have always been pretty good. You know what I mean? Nothing like Joe Rogan size, but compared to the average podcast, really good. So I was thinking, this should be a no-brainer for a lot of guys who make, backpacks and survival gear and that kind of stuff. And I kept getting the door slammed in my face because of Facebook. They were telling me they could spend X amount of dollars and target this group and that group, and they can see all the data and that kind of thing. And I guess, they didn't see kind of the writing on the wall the way I did, that before long, people were going to be hightailing it out of there for the next platform, or censorship would drive people out of there. But, whatever, it was what it was. So I basically decided the only thing we can do now to like show sponsorship viability is to build our own business of some sort that can become the sponsor of PBN. And that was how Disaster Coffee came to be. And I was looking for something that I could, because I'm freelance writing at the time and raising kids and doing the podcast network and all that. I needed something that was like, how do I get something to run basically on its own with some promotion when I have the time to promote? And that's how we got into the white label drop ship coffee business. That's what Disaster Coffee really is at its core. I taught a class at an event called Prepper Camp a few years back about entrepreneurship, and the best way I could explain how Disaster Coffee works is I told the audience that there's a lake behind us at that event. And I said, if I walked into that lake and drowned, like, everything works. Like the bills are auto drafted out of the business account. The orders go through the company that fills the orders. You know what I mean? And the whole thing would just, regardless of me, would operate anyway. Now, for how long successfully, I don't know, because the marketing piece would die with me. But the idea that the business can be autonomous, at least on the business side, was kind of what I was after. And now I got a couple business partners, and it's great. It's great fun because we donate money, but we also have fun creating these weird sort of disaster-driven coffees that are driven by disaster, but also like natural disaster itself. They're named after natural disasters, but also kind of the region the coffee comes from. And the coffee itself is unbelievable. It'll blow your mind.
So how obsessed has this made you with coffee, owning a coffee company?
Well, I was extremely addicted to caffeine before, you know what I mean? So this was just, it was really a no-brainer for me, Austin. You know what I mean? It was like, I'm drinking coffee like crazy anyway. Then I get my hands on this great coffee. We even sell green coffee beans. So now, when we're feeling super crazy, the business partners and one of my business partners, all he does now is roast our green coffee beans and turn it into his coffee. Like, he roasts them, I think, on a weekly basis, grinds them up, makes espresso out of them, makes coffee out of them. He's the super coffee nerd, but we appreciate him, man, because he follows it from start to finish.
It's definitely good to be working with good people. But I know you said this, you guys are giving back when disasters happen. I was in North Carolina last year for Helene, and that was a mess. We were 9 days without power, and then I helped out with Savage. But I know you have some affiliation with Grindstone, who is on the other side of the mountains. Just talk about kind of the give back component, like what you guys have done. And
yeah, sure. I mean, typically what we do is send money, but last year we sent 25-ish. I think it might have been 23 if I'm right down to the bag, but it was like 25 12-ounce bags of coffee to the fob location that Grindstone was at. We shipped that in there. Once they got on the ground, got set up, we sent that in there, and we told them, staff or people, whatever it is, whatever you want to do with it, you know what I mean? This is from us, so you guys can keep the mission going, because a lot of times, I mean, from my experience, when I first got into it, I was thinking, whatever, we always did about 10% of profits. It seemed like 8 to 10% by the end of the year when we calculated it all up. But what it seemed like to me, man, is if you're going to affect, if your goal is to affect what's happening on the ground, like I want to affect what's happening on the ground right now, stuff makes the difference more than cash. You know, I mean, you were there, so you saw. There was a bunch of people you were probably standing with who you could hand a stack of hundreds and they would go, well, this is cool, but we don't have any gas. And there's no gas stations. And there's no, you know what I mean? I don't have a house. There's no stores, you know? So I really feel like watching Grindstone do what it does and talking to other people who are on the ground during these crazy events, it seems like when they get on the camera and tell you like, we need X, Y, and Z, we don't need this, you know what I mean? Like, listen to them. That's what the people on the ground are going like, please. And for us, it's coffee's easy. You know what I mean? That you don't even have to ask. You need some coffee. Yeah, everybody's going through it. They all need a cup of coffee in the morning. So yeah, it's a good thing.
We were blowing the generator circuit with all the coffee pots going.
They're a big pool, man. Coffee pots are a big pool.
We were having 100 people a day show up at certain points, and that's a lot of coffee, especially at 7 a.m. on a semi-cold day. On the ground, it's like those needs change day to day.
Exactly.
And you know, it's really hard to get that word out, honestly. But I think one of the best examples that I saw was Sawyer sent tons of filters.
That's
like
huge.
that's what people needed was fresh water. Like they were there was a huge issue with the reservoir. But yeah.
Yeah, you could do if you're ever in that position again. I learned this from doing that event prepper camp I was talking about. You can do a Titan 2-burner stove with percolating pots, you know, like 12 cup pots. And if you put a fixture, there's an adapter that goes onto the Coleman stoves, you know, the 2-burner camping stoves that'll go right to a 25-pound tank. And you can make some coffee that way. I'm sure I do close to 100 cups of coffee a day at prepper camp for 3 days straight and hardly ever run out of propane. So that's a good sort of off-grid example of coffee brewing should you have no generator or running out of gas or, you know, like you said, blowing fuses and stuff like that for demand. Because that's a lot, you know. And coffee pots, they pool a lot of electricity. So
the Coleman setup is actually exactly what I had on. Oh,
good. Yeah, that's great.
On our property. So I'd go out there and stay a couple days sometimes, and that was just the easiest way to, because I had to haul it in initially as I was like clearing the land, and that was a great setup for cooking and for heating coffee. Eventually, I got a wood stove and actually started using that just because it's enjoyable.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
that's better, right? Heating and cooking.
Yeah. So, you would, when I was reading some background on you, and this will lead into the next thing, of you had 4 principles that we should all live by. What are those principles?
Man, I do a lot of writing and I hate writing bios. So if I'm honest with you, I don't even know what they are. And plus, like, I don't know when that was written. So those things change all the time for me, basically.
Yeah, it was on the Amazon bio. I understand outdated bios too. But, you know, you have a significant writing presence both with your books and article contributions. Can you talk about, like, was that what you kind of started in and then took it to topics that you care about?
Yeah, the freelance writing thing, I'd always been writing. Like well, maybe not some of those books, but I had published books before, not being a writer, not having any idea what I was doing with writing, working another job, doing that kind of stuff. But I'd always been writing, you know, I always liked it. And freelance writing just worked out because I kind of locked into a few good clients with this prepping and survival stuff that I was also really passionate about, and built on it from there, you know, and established that client base. And then that frees up time, you know what I mean? Then you're freeing up time to be able to write books. So now you have the time to sit down and really think about something, map something out, write it out. And from there, the writing of books, if you enjoy it, is kind of great. I mean, the editing process is a nightmare, but the writing of books that you want to write, like, I really enjoy it. Like, I really enjoy writing fiction and nonfiction both, if I'm into the topic. I hate rereading my books 15 times, you know what I mean, to get it started before you even send it off to an editor. But the process of writing is, we always wrote, we've always wrote. It's a weird thing. Like if you get old sort of journals from, 1700s in America and read them. I have a book. I don't even know who the guy is, but it's just a book of his journals. And you see how all communication was happening through the written word, no phone, you know what I mean?
Right.
And what I realized is like everybody always wrote. Like it's this weird like crown that you wear on your head when you're a writer, like I write, you know what I mean? Like everybody writes, and everybody should probably write a lot more. I always still think, Austin, like one of the coolest things you can get, like one of the coolest things you can send, and one of the coolest things you can get is a handwritten letter. You know what I mean? Because you can't buy it on Amazon. You can't you know what I mean? It's so unique and it's so rare this day and age. Like to receive a handwritten letter from someone you care about or haven't heard from in a while. It's just super rare. It's an awesome thing. So there's value in it. And and it's cool because everybody can do it. We just choose not to because it's like quicker. You know what I mean? To text.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it brings up kind of a discussion I was having the other day of intentionality and connection is something that we're drifting away for, even though we're more connected, quote unquote. How have you built your community to try and have that intentional connection? Like you obviously have the events side of it, but what else have you guys done to build that community?
Well, a lot of things that we do are kind of the same that you hear from a lot of communities, right? The member meetings and interaction with your audience itself. I think probably the most unique thing that we do with our community is that we put not necessarily demands, but we want them to do stuff. You know what I mean? Like we want them to do things. When we talk about prepping, we don't talk about it in this is what I do and this is the way I do it. Like a lot of times these are the things that everyone should do. And we show what we do and and a lot of times these guys are doing, like I said, they're already doing things that are impressive. So then we kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And, there's also a weird thing that happens in our community. I don't know if it's completely unique to sort of the self-reliance mentality, but there's a lot of sharing, like a lot of sharing of gear and tools and news and, technology and sort of back and forth from audience members to hosts, from hosts, and a lot of that stuff that kind of turns into this big community swirl. Not too long ago, we all kind of got high on this Mesh-tastic off-grid.
We've touched on family a couple times. Like, how has your family been impacted by this? Like, played into it? I know your kids are a little older.
As far as what the lifestyle or the prepping stuff,
lifestyle, coffee, running a network, being an entrepreneur,
all of the above. Then, yeah. I mean, it's been a different thing for all of them, kind of, I'd say. I got a presence online, you know what I mean? And I'm sure that's no picnic for my 14-year-old. He never says anything, but, right? I got to imagine, I have my moments. I'm sure people are like, what was your dad talking about the other day? You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, one of the big things that got me into freelance writing was the ability to be here all the time and the ability to have the bandwidth to say, I could finish writing this project at 8 p.m. tonight rather than at, 9 a.m. right now. So I've had a life with my kids that, most dads probably don't even want. You know what I mean? Like the sheer amount of time that I would spend with my kids. I mean, summer break, it's me and the boys. My wife, a lot of times, is working out of the home. She's in the house now a lot of times because of, post 2020 nature, but it's just so much time. And that was part of the goal. Like part of the goal was, well, what used to happen to me all the time, Austin, is I'd be out with them because my wife, she's a go-getter. work, no work, whatever. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of time it's me and the boys hanging out. Plus it's, you got 2 sons, you're going to hang out and do things that, dads and sons do. But we'd be out and about, and these people would come, these older people would come up to me, and I think it was around about the time my youngest was 2. So my oldest was probably like 6. And they would always say the same thing, man. They would be like, don't miss those years. You know what I mean? They would be like, oh, I wish I could go back and have those years. And I was like, well, I'm just going to take their damn advice and, try to make this writing thing work so that I don't miss those years, And like I told you, this is part of it, right? My son today had an off-campus lunch, and because of the nature of what I do, I could go pick him up at 11 o'clock, go out and eat pho with him and take him back to school. And so on that side of things, it's been all that I could ever want. You know what I mean? Is to
Sounds
have
like
that
freedom.
free time to do that all.
Sounds like freedom. We were at home up until about 6 months ago, and we moved to Nashville around then, and I miss spending that time with kids.
Yeah, man.
Certainly a little more focused now without them screaming in the background, but we're trying to build a system kind of like you have with the coffee company, to where it runs itself a lot more and we can spend more time with them. So
yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you this much about it, Austin. There is no what I thought was that there was like a volume that you could fill up and say like, all right, I did it. Like as a dad, I did it. I spent the right amount of time with them, and now they can grow up and move out, and I'm good. You know what I mean? And what I found out is there is no like amount of time. There's not enough time. You know what I mean? You can never have enough time. And even me, I look back and go, what if I would have did it that way? Or what, you know what I mean? What if I would have pushed him in that direction? Or what if, you know what I mean? There's no amount, you never get full. You're never like, oh, I got all the kid time I needed and I'm good. Like they're still going to grow up and leave, and you're still going to be like, oh man, I miss them. So, don't beat yourself up or anything like that, because it's just, they're your kids. You know what I mean? It's the best time of your life.
Yeah. My goal is the family compound, build a castle in the woods. And I know they don't always stay with that, but hopefully at least one of them.
You never know.
So you're working on a lot right now. What's the current targets?
Yeah, I mean, so we always have sort of a running overview and or a running sort of narrative, right, of the network. And the big one this year has just been sort of American preparedness, preparing the homeland for whatever kind of, threats are going to befall the United States, let alone the individual PBN listener, right? They could be things like personal hiccups with work, all the way up to, multi-location terrorist attacks and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of been our 2025 narrative. On the back end of that, there's all kinds of stuff we've been exploring. One of the big things we're looking to do in the very near future is start playing around with more emergency communication methods. So our ability to connect at least with some listeners and some hosts when there's no cell signal, right? When there's no electricity for a long period of time, that kind of stuff. That's something we are really trying to establish. Kicking off Sunday night, we're actually settling a little more into our religious side of things and doing a 3-day fast and prayer for the people who seem to want so much chaos in the country. I'd heard a lot of people, Austin, talking on both sides of the political spectrum about how you can't talk to that side. You can't convince that side of anything. You can't change them. This is the way they are. They're evil, whatever this thing is, right? Like I've said it. I've heard other people say it. And I'm just sitting around like thinking about Jesus and saying the basics of what you know about Jesus is love your neighbor, pray for your enemy. And this week was just one of those epiphanies where it was like, all right, well, let's do it. let's do it and see what happens, and fasting is something we were always doing on the network anyway. It's like I try to do it like quarterly, 72 hours, get as many people to join us as possible, because it's an exercise in a lot of things. I don't know if you've done anything like that, but
Yeah. Prayer and fasting is very powerful. It's been a while, but when I was in Florida, my church did 21 days, and like obviously variations on that, but
yeah,
it's so powerful.
it is, man. It really is an underrated thing. Well, sundown Sunday night we're starting, and sundown Wednesday night we'll be wrapping it up. And like I said, the intention is to pray for those who are kind of lost in the sauce right now. You know what I mean? And might not have the best intentions for us, but that's kind of what Jesus said to do. So we'll see. We're always operating on all those different levels. We always we run routines for our audience too on a regular basis, prepping stuff to do, fitness stuff to do, fasting stuff to do, and Bible stuff to do sometimes. But like I said, I don't want to become a person who just talks about what the rest of us should be doing or what I'm doing. I always want it to be kind of this, let's get better together. Because for me, that's how it started. I started a podcast and I didn't know anything about prepping, and I was very clear about it with the audience. I said, we're going to learn this thing together because I don't know what I'm doing.
That's
so
fair.
I still feel like there's plenty of that to do 10 years later.
Well, I mean, with world events, with running multiple things, with a family, there's pressure, I'm sure, that comes in with that. So how do you handle pressure when it does come?
Well, my first job was a chef. I was a chef first. I went to culinary school. I was a dishwasher, my first job in a really busy local diner where people just got, it was an under the table child labor situation. 13-year-olds were getting thrown out all the time. You know what I mean? You're not fast enough. Get out of here. I think I was making like $4.25 an hour, something like that. Rich, but I felt rich when you were that young. So the pressure thing's always been there in my life. You know what I mean? It's always been pressure to get the food out on time, get the dishes done on time, get this done on time, that kind of thing. The only difference with pressure now is it really, really becomes the income. You know what I mean? The wavering income. Like you have good years, you have bad years, it's business. And I was a salaried guy or an hourly guy, and that always has been one of the biggest pressures for me is adapting as a business owner and, trying to make stuff work when things that used to work aren't working anymore, right? That's when the pressure really sets in for me, because outside of that, I've just been managing that kind of pressure for a long time. And also along the way, I've, cooked up all kinds of ways to deal with it on top of that. So you really become a force when you can manage the pressure, but then outside of work, you can, sort of cleanse it too at the same time, right?
Yeah. And you said, we go through ups and downs. What's been a major challenge in the past couple of years, and like what lessons did you take from that?
I'm literally in a big change right now, because not only has artificial intelligence affected the demand for freelance writing, Trump presidency, and this happened in 2016 also, has affected the demand for prepping and survival content at large. You know what I mean? Depending on who the ruler is, there's more consumption of prepping and survival content. And in 2016, we dubbed it the Trump slump. We said, yeah, there's a legitimate like Trump slump in the prepping world. And we had, sponsors that we talked to who were going through it and all that kind of stuff, people who were doing podcasts like us and that kind of thing. It's not really hurt the podcast network very much, but I've definitely noticed it in the writing world. There's a lot of people. I had clients who I'd written for a long time come to me and say, "Hey, do you need more work? Like, do you need someone to write for your network?" And we don't have a blog, so it doesn't really help us at all. So it's it's adapt time. That's all. That's it. In my experience over all these years, you get in these little honey holes where what you're doing is working and it's working, and you just work it. And then before long, you start to see, something's changing. And those things that work, they don't necessarily work anymore. And if you're going to be in business, man, you got to be able to adapt. And I think that's exponential now, Austin. Like whereas maybe the first 5 years being in business, You got a lot more heads up on, whoa, that's changing. I could see it coming if you're forward thinking, right? Like I got time, I got a year, I got 2 years before that really hits. What's happening now, I think, is like
so fast.
They announce something and then the next day you're like, oh, everybody's using that. Okay, it's all different now. No, and I think it's going to continue to be that way. So adaptability is key, man, to managing all that.
Yeah, it sounds like another case of you actually living your principles and not just talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? That's the only way to keep it going. I got a lot of help, you know what I mean? I got set things up in a way that, we're never not making money because we have a membership over at the PBN side of things. So, it's just figuring out how to sustain yourself in that way. And, one of the biggest things too, Austin, is also kind of, I see one of the things that I see in society today is make the most money as like by any means necessary. And I could I trade any amount of money for the hard times. You know what I mean? Because the hard times, the reason there are hard times is because I decided to live this way. And because I decided to live this way, I've had a life that I have been able to be in rather than just kind of like watching from the outside going like, oh, I can't wait till this shift's over. Can't wait till this is over. Can't wait till that's over. And then I'm panting for the last hour of the day going like, was this good? Was this a good day? I don't even know what this was, So yeah, I don't know. There does seem to be and I see it in all kinds of people too, Austin. I see it. I have a buddy who is really devoutly Christian, and we were talking the other day, and he said, I'm just trying to make as much money as I can before 2030. And, I don't know. It just, maybe I don't fit in because of that, because it is such a hustle time, but there are so many things in life. Money, you could throw all the money you want at it. You can never have it back. You know what I mean? I can never see my 14-year-old at 8 years old again. It doesn't matter. I could call Warren Buffett up. Yo, can you get me 8-year-old Carter back? All the money in the world. You can't get 5 seconds with that kid again. You know what I mean? And so that's been a big guiding principle of mine, come hell or high water.
That's powerful. I think Buffett has talked about that as well.
Has he? I don't follow him very much. He just was the first guy that popped into my mind about
he's like,
somebody who had the money.
I would trade everything to go back to 21 or some statement.
Did he say that?
I think he probably got asked the question like, hey, would you take the money or 21? And I think he's like, yeah, I'd take 21 every day.
Yeah.
So what's something that you really enjoy talking about that you rarely get the chance to?
Warhammer.
Okay, nice. the board version or the video game version?
The constructing and painting of miniatures and playing the game, but the lore too. I mean, it's so dorky. We do not have to get you don't have to.
It's all right. I love watching the YouTube videos of people doing the battle setups.
Oh, so, yeah, I know. It's great. It's a weird thing. It's one of those things that like you have to actualize a little bit if you're like a run of the mill dude. Like you gotta actualize a little bit before you can be like, yeah, I play Warhammer. You know what I mean? Like everyone in my house is disappointed. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things you really have to be comfortable with yourself to be like, I don't know, man, I like it. It's just one of those things.
No, there's so much cool stuff to do. And like finding something that you really vibe with, to use a California word, I think is a good thing. Makes life a little better.
Yeah, so. You got to have it. Like I said, the decompression from the pressure, right? Like you got to have those things and the better the easier it is for you to identify, like, what am I really into? Like what's taking me out of the pressure cooker and really allowing me to be like, catch my breath and okay, there is life outside of all this. Like those things are invaluable too, man. Those things are absolutely invaluable. And that's, I'm good at finding those. I've always been good at finding what I'm really into. And it's another thing I worry about with the sort of the hustle, money over everything mentality. You know what I mean? You start to deaden everything in you because, like I could get 2 more hours in, get X amount of trades in and, whatever. And I don't know. Got to live it too.
What do you think is something that's critical in the world right now that people just really need to know about?
The world is at an edible place. You know what I mean? It's one of the weird disconnects, man. Like the trees and plants are medicine. The trees and plants are food that you walk by every day, that you mow, that you despise, that you poison. And it's been that way forever. I call it the 100-year amnesia on my show. You know, like we've gone through after World War II and like the age of convenience and comfort and canned everything. Like we went through an amnesia that is, it almost seems fictitious. Like you think about how long people have been eating wild stuff and turning plants into medicine. And we are just like totally forgotten every bit of it. You know what I mean? Just every bit of it.
There was the one generation that didn't want to be on the farm.
That was it. That's all it took. It's crazy when you think about it. But yeah. And people get excited about it too. You know, it's one of those things. Once people get dialed into it, like it's like Warhammer. They go deep. They get into it. And it's a good thing to get into. You should know your world, you know?
So I want to ask you to share some advice. We've talked a lot about business and people being prepared and the financial aspect. Like for somebody just starting out like you were in 2018, right? How can somebody make sure that they have the success to be prepared without going overboard and that becoming the only focus?
Prepared for business or prepared for like starting a business, or prepared in the prepping sense?
The financial side of it and making sure that like that is in order so that you can like support your family no matter what happens.
I got you. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so, you know, situation to situation is going to be important. I was never under the complete pressure of providing exclusively. You know what I mean? So yeah. I wasn't the sole provider in the house. But that being said, you know, we still had bills that we needed income for. So I at least tried to secure, and I think this is a good idea, just secure, you know, enough business in whatever realm you're in. And everybody can do this. It's just a side hustle. You know what I mean? Make it a side hustle until you can make it a business. And that's going to take a lot of what a lot of people don't want to give. You know, that's going to be the opposite of my message. I was living the opposite of my message. Well, not really, because I always woke up really early. I'd wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do writing jobs on the weekends, and then go work my regular job during the week, you know, and whatever else it took. Still doing podcasts, still doing all that kind of stuff and not getting paid for it. So, you know, that insane hustle portion is probably going to be a requirement for you. It's going to be a requirement for you to work 2 jobs essentially before you can leave one behind and say, all right, now my business is my job. But yeah, I felt like once I locked down a handful of clients that I could do it. You know what I mean? I could do it and I could make it work and we could build on it from there. And then, you know, another big piece of the puzzle is consult with people who are already doing what you want to do. You know, I know people who waste a lot of time. They start a landscaping business and they're like, I'm going to figure out how to do this. And I'm like, dude, there's landscaping guys on every corner. Like, ask them what they do, where they get clients, how they get, you know, not the guy down the street because you're his competitor, but a state over, you know. And I did a lot of that. I did a lot of listening to freelance writers who were selling freelance writing courses on YouTube just to figure out, you know, how to set a salary and how to, you know, do those kinds of things. And with all that confidence and work, you'll shift in from one business into the other. I never jumped ship and said, I'm going to start a business and have no fallback. You know, I couldn't have done that. We weren't in a position to do that. So transition.
I think that's incredible. Doing the work, putting the effort in, and then avoiding the mistakes by finding somebody who has been there and done that. And then
that's what you can't afford.
Following the guidance. Yeah.
That's what the average guy can't afford. You know what I mean? The average guy who doesn't have, you know, $500,000 to start his business, he can't afford to make those critical errors where you wind up like, oh, we're making no money now. We were making money, then I quit my job. Now we're making no money. Now we got real problems.
and you lose the time along the way too.
That true. So, that too. Yeah.
That's a powerful thing. And I don't think I can put it any better than you did. Thank you, James. It has been incredible talking with you, and maybe we'll have to do it again sometime. Appreciate it.
Whenever you want, Austin. I appreciate you bringing me on. It was a good time.
Thanks, James.